Welcome to the Nehemiah Action. I am Archbishop Thomas Winsky of the Catholic Archdiocese of Miami.
I am Bishop Pedro Suarez of the Florida Bahama Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
And I'm A.J. Richardson, Bishop of the AME Church in Florida and the Bahamas.
I'm Ken Carter, Bishop of the Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church.
And I'm Russell Kendrick. I'm the Bishop of the Diocese of the Central Gulf Coast in the Episcopal Church.
I am Bartholomew Banks, President of the Progressive M&E Baptist State Convention of Florida.
And together we're so glad to see people of faith from all denominations and backgrounds coming together to do justice as people of faith. It is a responsibility to speak up to ensure that our communities create policies and practices that are in line with God's vision.
God's vision of a community where we love our neighbor as ourselves and we protect the widow and the orphan from exploitation.
Currently, tens of thousands of children and adults in Florida get arrested every year for minor nonviolent offenses like trespassing through an orange grove to get home or driving a car with an expired tag.
Once children or adults are arrested, they are branded for life with a criminal record and are forced to pay all sorts of fines and fees that can trap them for life in the revolving door of our criminal justice system.
We are so thankful that you as clergy and lay people have led the way in researching this problem and other community problems. Tonight, you bring forward common sense solutions to make our community a fair, just, and more prosperous place.
We bring you blessings as you continue this important work.
Good evening and welcome in. I'm the Reverend Kathy Turicki and I welcome you to the 2021 Nehemiah Action Assembly of Faith. Thank you so much for We have people rolling in still at the drive-in, and we've got people tuning in on YouTube and Facebook. First thing that's going to happen is Dr. McFadden is going to prepare us for the proceedings tonight for our Action Assembly.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Claudette McFadden, a professor at Bethune-Cookman and a member of New St. James Missionary Baptist Church in Daytona Beach. I'm going to review how we, faith, conduct our business at the Action Assembly. We are people of different faiths, races, and backgrounds, but this evening we speak as one voice. On this stage, our spokespersons will be our representatives. During this evening's Action Assembly, we will call on community leaders to come before us to answer a set of questions with either a yes or no answer. I want to personally assure you that well in advance of tonight's Action Assembly, these officials received copies of the questions. Each of them was also invited to a pre-Action Assembly meeting with one of Faith's issue committees. We expect that each community leader will say yes, but if a leader says no, our spokespersons may negotiate with the official on our behalf. There may be some tension this evening, but tension is unavoidable if we are to make real change in our community. We will not disrespect these public servants, but we will ask direct, straightforward questions, and we do expect them to give us direct, straightforward answers. At the end of a set of questions, each community leader will be given a minute to explain or clarify his or her answer to a specific or question or questions. As part of the preparation for tonight, I want us to be ready for a few things that often happen when we ask for changes to the status quo. When we ask for money, we often hear, Our constituents expect us to be good stewards of their tax dollars. Well, this is the largest public gathering of Volusia County constituents that I know of. Faith is perfectly clear in its position that ensuring affordable housing is an excellent use of tax dollars. So let's not be distracted by excuses. We are not confronting any public official or community leader personally, and our goal is not to hurt feelings. We address community leaders and officials because they have the power to change systems. That includes changing laws, changing policies, and changing procedures. Now let's talk about what our part will be this evening. If we receive a yes answer to any question, Rob Smith will wave the orange flag so we can begin to show our approval by honking our car horns. If we receive a no answer to any question, we will give no response. Even when we disagree with an answer, we will be respectful of our public servants. Our rules call for a different, more powerful reaction: silence. We will be completely silent. Here's how it works. If we get a no, Ron will cross his arms. That will be a signal for us to be completely silent. But let's practice getting a yes response. So an official just said yes to one of our questions, and Ron will immediately wave the orange flag. And I will say honk for justice, and I think we are ready.
Good evening. I am Reverend Wendell Webster, the pastor of Mount Zion AME Church, Daytona Beach, Florida. Faith is a coalition of congregations who work together to build power for justice. Our goals include making sure everyone has access to a roof over their heads, to make sure that our community is using common sense criminal justice responses to children who misbehave. We aren't here to make enemies, nor are we necessarily here to make friends. We are here because we are called to do justice, not just when it is easy, but always. And to do justice, we need each other. We are Black, brown, white, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, Christian, Muslim, Sikh, and Unitarian. Despite our differences, we are united in our call for justice in our community. We are neighbors, and we are in this fight for justice together. We were afraid that we wouldn't have enough space this evening. So we've encouraged people in West Volusia to attend a watch party at Our Lady of the Lakes in Deltona. We also have a number of people watching tonight online, and we will be announcing the number of people watching the action with us throughout the evening. I officially call the 2021 Action Assembly to order.
I want to welcome Faith Action Assembly to the Daytona Beach Drive-In Christian Church. I'm Reverend Bob Kemp-Baird, Senior Pastor of the Drive-In Christian Church. And on behalf of the church, I extend to you welcome and hospitality to Faith and to all who are attending tonight's gathering. The primary reason this event is being held here tonight is so that the purposes of this gathering can be carried forth, even during these hopefully waning days of the coronavirus pandemic, in a safe and healthy, socially distanced format. For this reason, I ask that if you need to leave your car and if you are going to be in contact with other people closer than 6 feet outdoors, that you please wear your face mask. If you need to enter either of the buildings to use the restrooms, please have your face mask on as well. Restrooms are located on the lower level of this building. The building is marked Building A, and on the main level of Building E, which is the building behind you, known as our Friendship Hall. There are volunteers stationed at the entrances to assist you. At the conclusion of tonight's gathering, it may be dark, so please be careful and aware of what's around you when you depart. Watch for other cars, and especially for pedestrians who may be walking around you. The white posts in the field that mark the rows are quite unforgiving if you hit them. Both exits onto A1A will be open, and the Peninsula exit here as well will be open when you leave. Right turns onto A1A and Peninsula are recommended. We also welcome those who are participating tonight from other locations or from their home. And so I ask that we all would be in an attitude of prayer as I offer this invocation in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Please pray with me. God, grant your blessing upon this gathering, that in our action, justice may be accomplished, that in our coming together, healing, wholeness, and reconciliation may be achieved in the parts of our community most vulnerable, that in our spirits, we may experience your Spirit that brings peace and hope. In all that is accomplished tonight, may the words of the prophet Amos be foremost in our purpose for coming together, that justice may flow down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Allow this vision to quench the thirst of your people with your justice. May we together seek to live in the righteousness you desire. And may your ways become our ways in all ways as we endeavor to serve you for the greater good of all humanity. For this is our prayer, offered in your great and holy name. Amen.
Good evening. I'm Joan Campanaro from Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church in Daytona Beach, and I'm here to give you an update on First Step Shelter, a homeless assistance center that Faith has advocated for years, and thanks to all of you, is now a reality. First Step Shelter offers not only shelter, but comprehensive social services so that our single homeless brothers and sisters can get themselves transitioned into permanent housing. First Step Shelter has been maintaining a census of about 40 to 45, and now additionally, they have the safe zone open on site, which has been utilized daily and sometimes to its full capacity of 24. So as many of you probably heard, earlier this year there was a tragedy at First Step Shelter. One of the residents, Ashley Baker, was struck by a vehicle as she was crossing Highway 92 to get to the bus stop for her very first day of work. In response, the community and local leadership has really stepped up, We've already raised $12,000 for Ashley's Ride, which is a program to help meet the transportation needs of the shelter residents. Additionally, the county council has been working closely with Votrin to try to find a safer way for the residents to get to the bus stop. Now, First Step Shelter is doing great work, and it's closer than ever to Faith's original vision. But unfortunately, due to COVID, our volunteerism is at an all-time low. The shelter would welcome any participation from us in a variety of means. They could use help. They need a volunteer coordinator, assistance in their kitchen, assistance helping the residents with their job searches, resident activities, and of course, administrative duties. However, before the volunteer program could be successful, we really need somebody to step up and be that volunteer coordinator. So if you're interested, I would really encourage you to call the shelter, Michelle, at 386-361-3800 at extension 220, or you can even call me. My cell phone number is 910-987-5363. Now, one issue that the shelter is experiencing is that although the residents work the program, they get their jobs, they do all the things asked of them, get a housing voucher, there still is not enough affordable housing to place them in. In fact, last month's statistics showed that there was 8 residents awaiting housing. So a more affordable housing in our community is an absolute must, and we look forward to the great work that Faith is doing on this issue. Faith moves mountains. Thank you.
And the people of God said amen. And the people of God said amen again. Hello, I am Reverend Randolph Bracey, Jr., Dean of the School of Religion at Bethune-Cookman University. I have a question to ask. What would Jesus do? And the second part of that question, what would Jesus do about civil citations? The term, what would Jesus do, has been around for a long time, but more recently achieved great prominence with the acronym WWJD, which is commonly associated with bracelets, wristbands, trinkets, coffee mugs, and the like, which became popular during the 1990s. What would Jesus do was simply to imitate the life of Jesus, his purposes, thoughts, and behavior. This afternoon, we are gathered here as people of faith to explore an issue which has brought tension locally here in Volusia County. And the issue is juvenile civil citations. First and foremost, let it be understood that I am a preacher of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, and rather than get out of my lane, I decided to explore the issue of juvenile civil citations from a biblical perspective and from the thought, what would Jesus do about civil citations? Recently, I was struck by an opinion piece in the Daytona Beach News Journal by Pastor Wendell Webster entitled, quote, "Let's stop arresting so many kids in Volusia County and turn lives around instead." I was also struck by the graphic photo of the young person in handcuffs associated with the article. As a Christian pastor who's been rooted and grounded and nurtured in the church, especially the Black church, I cannot help but take a position on this matter. For I have always been on the side of speaking for people who cannot speak for themselves. I thought about this matter and I decided what better way to get Jesus' position on civil citations than to explore what he said in his word. In this regard, I'm reminded of the first time Jesus read the word of God and spoke publicly in the synagogue, as found in Luke's Gospel, chapter 4, verses 16 through 19. Jesus, and the text reads this wise, "And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he's anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of the sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised." Friends, here we get our first insight into Jesus' thinking relative to matters of social justice. Look again closely at the text. Jesus says he was anointed to preach the good news to the poor. He was sent to heal the brokenhearted. He was sent to preach deliverance to the captives. He was sent to set at liberty them that were oppressed. This was Jesus' mission on earth. And as followers of him, we are called to imitate his example. The Old Testament helps us out with the 8th century prophet Micah, who gives an answer when he says, what would Jesus do about civil citations? Micah says, he has told thee, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. You can honk on that one. Please understand that I do understand that much of the ongoing tension between the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and the faith organization surrounds the use and application of statistics from the Department of Juvenile Justice relative to civil citations and their implications for Volusia County as compared to other Florida counties. But for me, the larger issue goes beyond just data and statistics. It goes to what the Lord God himself requires of a just and righteous people. Ten years ago in 2011, the Florida legislature, which is meeting right now, enacted the civil citation law, establishing what a youth behavior at his or her first encounter with the juvenile justice system, providing an alternative to arrest for that child. This means that youth who successfully complete a pre-arrest, post-arrest, and teen court diversion program after being arrested for a non-violent misdemeanor are eligible to have their arrest expunged, provided that they have no other criminal history. Herein lies the problem, according to Reverend Webster. He says in that article in the Daytona Beach Journal, there are too many children are being criminalized for misbehavior. Children as young as 6 years old are routinely arrested for minor misdemeanors and labeled as criminals. Even after expunging their record, a second-level background check will reveal past arrests, regardless of the offense or the offender's age. This discretion forever burdens them, potentially destroying future education, housing, and employment opportunities. Long story short, Reverend Webster puts forward the position that civil citations are a better solution than arrest. I agree wholeheartedly. From where I stand with Jesus, it all boils down to forgiveness. With Jesus, it all boils down to pardon. With Jesus, it all boils down to clemency. With Jesus, it all boils down to giving a person a second chance. WWJD, what would Jesus do? The sum and substance is that he would give a juvenile a second chance. I'm reminded of that passage in the Gospel of St. Matthew when Peter came to Jesus and asked him the question, if my brother does wrong against me, how many times shall I forgive him? Peter, answering his own question, said, 7 times. The Lord Jesus responded, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. You ought to honk for that one. A juvenile civil citation is the government's answer to do the right thing by giving a second chance. In another case, I'm reminded of the woman caught in the act of adultery. And by the law of Moses, she was to be stoned to death for her infidelity, notwithstanding the fact that she could not have performed the act by herself. Jesus responded to this group of men. He said, he that is without sin, cast the first stone. From the oldest to the youngest, the men dropped their stones and left the woman standing there. Jesus asked the woman, where were the men who condemned you? They are gone, she said. Jesus responded, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. What would Jesus do about civil citations? Time and time again, scriptures speak of Jesus forgiving and giving a second chance. At the point of being redundant, for the umpteenth time, it is an obvious fact that juvenile civil citations are a more effective remedy than arrest. It gives the juvenile the opportunity to get it right. I told you about Jesus' first message when he was told about why he came, to heal the brokenhearted, set at liberty them that are bruised. So I close with this statement. We, faith, and I stand with you, we can no longer remain silent. The future of our community and our houses of worship depend upon us speaking to the matter of juvenile civil citation. The next generation is depending on us to speak out, no matter how much tension it causes. No matter how much tension it causes. We cannot afford to be silent while a generation of our children are suffering because we refuse to speak out. WWJD, what would Jesus do? he would speak for juvenile civil citation.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Moe, and I am a member of Allen Chapel AME Church in Daytona Beach. Working families in our community are suffering to keep a roof over their heads. Seniors in our communities are forced to choose between paying rent and buying medication and grocery. They are not alone. The average renter in our area earns just $13.35 an hour. But to afford a one-bedroom apartment in Volusia County in 2021, someone working full-time would need to make over $17 an hour. Who makes less than that? I'll tell you. Nursing assistants who care for sick patients, grocery store clerks who stock the shelves, construction workers, cooks, maids, custodian, receptionists. These are our essential workers. These are our neighbors. These are our friends and our family. Listen, nearly 1/3 of all renters in our area pay over half of their income on rent. That is a higher rate of cost burden than New York City and San Francisco metro area. An estimate from the National Low Income Housing Coalition a few years ago found that our county deficit to affordable rental units numbers over 16,000. Tonight, we have someone from our congregation who is here to share her story of how this issue impacts her and her family. Sharon?
Good evening. My name is Sharon Branch. I'm a member of Mount Zion AME Church in Daytona Beach, pastored by Reverend Wendell C. Webster. I work part-time at our church, and my husband Willie is a retired AME pastor and a disabled Vietnam vet. My husband and I have lived in the same place now for 8 years in Ormond Beach. We've been fortunate to have a kind landlord who hasn't raised the rent exponentially. We've been paying $1,000 per month, and we've been able to afford that with no problem. However, in January, we got a call from our landlord letting us know he was planning to sell all 3 of his properties. Unlike his other tenants, he gave Willie and I until April 1st to locate somewhere to live. We soon faced the reality of what the rental market in Volusia County had become for working families and seniors. 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot apartments go for between $1,700 and $1,900 monthly. So many new apartment complexes have been built in the last 8 years. And guess what? Nearly all of them are luxury units. Apartments under $1,000 are extremely hard to find, and those that do exist are in dangerous areas or in unsafe conditions. As we look to the future, we began to realize what we would soon have to give up just in order to find somewhere else to live. We've been helping our granddaughter financially, who has been out of work and herself struggling to find housing. But like so many of you here tonight, we've been financially supporting a church that is struggling in the midst of this pandemic. We both have started driving for DoorDash, even though my husband is a disabled veteran who walks with a cane a lot of the time. All it took was one phone call, and we were thrust into the reality that families in Volusia County face every day. By the grace of God, our landlord has since decided not to sell our particular property. And we truly praise God for that. But my family now knows firsthand what so many others in the area suffer. We're thankful to be a part of Faith and for the opportunity to share our story, because alone we will not be heard. We have faith as a platform to be the voice for many. Why? Because faith moves mountains. Volusia County, we need a housing trust fund.
Sharon, you are courageous for sharing your story. We recognize that it's not easy doing so, but your struggle, you're not alone. To find affordable housing is even worse. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake. The problem of lack of affordable housing and workforce housing is not unique in Volusia County. It is a national problem. But local leaders in communities all over the country, as well as leaders in our neighboring counties, are stepping up to the plate. They aren't waiting for the state or federal government to solve the problem. They are acting. You see, over 700 local governments across the United States have created housing trust funds, which are funds that are distributed in grants to developers who agree to create or rehabilitate housing that's affordable for working families and seniors. And while housing trust funds do not create the housing, they make the development or rehabilitation possible. Here's an example. In 2018, Louisville, Kentucky issued $9.5 million in grants from their housing trust fund to 22 different projects. Those projects, nearly 500 were new units of affordable housing, and over 800 rehabilitated or preserved units. The total cost of all this development was over $160 million. The majority of which came from private, state, and federal sources. But it was all made possible from the $9.5 million from Louisville's Housing Trust Fund. This means that for every dollar Louisville spent in Housing Trust Fund, they leveraged $17 in the development of affordable housing. This is not an anomaly. In fact, this is the standard. According to the Housing Trust Fund projects, an average, a county leverages $18 for every dollar put into the Housing Trust Fund. In other words, if our county was to establish a Housing Trust Fund with at least $7 million a year, matching the success rate of Louisville, we could hope to create the needed 16,000 units of affordable housing over the course of 2 decades. That is why Faith has called for the creation of a countywide housing trust fund for the last 2.5 years. In the last few years, other counties in our state have acted. Countywide housing trust funds have been established in Hillsborough, Broward, and Alachua counties, as well as our neighbors in Orange and Seminole counties. Many of these counties are funding their housing trust fund with money in their general budget. However, Seminole County and Orange County are also studying the use of linkage fees. You see, linkage fees seek to reconcile the link between development and the rising cost of rent. To implement linkage fees, a community first has to commission a nexus study, which analyzes the need for workforce housing, as well as the link between development and housing costs. The study then summarizes how linkage fees could help to eliminate the problem. Now, as you all know, our county and city governments have been active in helping to get businesses to relocate to our area. Sometimes that's been through tax breaks and incentives. For instance, Daytona 1 and Tangier Outlet shopping centers were both given millions of dollars in tax breaks by our county. Let me say that again. Daytona 1 and Tangier shopping centers have been given tax breaks and incentives of millions of dollars, period. Listen. New businesses in our community can be a wonderful thing. It often means new jobs for our residents. But many of these new jobs don't pay enough for an employee to afford a standard 1-bedroom apartment. Linkage fees are a reasonable way to ensure that new development help to alleviate the problem that such development precipitates. perpetuates, I'm sorry. We believe that our county government is the best equipped to create the housing trust fund. But in order for linkage fees to fund a housing trust fund, there would need to be participation from our cities. And so Faith is now calling for our county government and interested cities to come together and do a joint study for the use of linkage fees. Thank you so much for listening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is the Reverend Nathan Magala, and I'm blessed to pastor Island Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church in the city of Daytona Beach. And this is the Reverend Ben Collins, the verifying pastor of Collective United Methodist Church, and the Reverend Collins will be helping me ask the questions this evening. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Faith has offered to meet face-to-face with each of these stakeholders individually for the past few months. We have submitted our questions ahead of time so that they'll be prepared for their answers. We ask that each public official provide a clear answer to each question, and once they have responded, they'll be given up to 1 minute to explain your answers. As we call up the mayor of the city of Daytona Beach, Mayor Henry, do you believe the lack of affordable or workforce housing is a problem that local governments in Volusia County should address?
Yes.
That's a yes. To implement linkage fees, a community is first legally required to commission a Nexus study. Will you personally advocate that your city participate in a countywide Nexus study on linkage fees to fund a housing trust fund?
Absolutely, yes.
That's a yes. Now, Mayor Henry, you have 1 minute to address the assembly.
Well, thank you for your commitment to homelessness and your commitment to housing. I have said throughout my candidacy and throughout my tenure as mayor that there is no more important role for us as a community than to make certain that housing is available for every family in Volusia County, especially families that are willing to work hard and do their best to achieve the American dream. To that end, we're working towards not only affordable housing, but home ownership. And I am 150% committed to linkage fees and 150% committed to doing all that I can to ensure that affordable and adequate housing is available for all residents in Daytona Beach.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Now, Mayor Apgar of the city of DeLand was not able to attend this evening due to their city commission meeting. However, he has met with our committee and has answered both questions. He answered yes to the first question and yes to the second question as long as the cost of the Nexus study is reasonable. We believe the cost will be reasonable, especially if multiple cities are participating in the study. So thank you to the mayor of the city of DeLand. The mayor of the city of New Smyrna Beach, Mayor Owen, was originally scheduled to attend, but he let us know this morning something had come up and he was not able to attend tonight. We will now call up members of our county council, beginning with County Council Member Bert Gutman. Councilwoman, do you believe the lack of affordable or workforce housing is a problem that local governments in Volusia County should address?
Yes.
That's a yes. Will you personally advocate for and vote to create a housing trust fund in Volusia County before the end of 2021?
Yes.
To implement linkage fees, a community is first legally required to commission an excess study in consideration of linkage fees as a source of funding for a housing trust fund. Will you personally advocate and vote for the county to commission an excess study on linkage fees?
Yes.
Councilwoman, will you advocate and vote for directing county staff to identify various funds and funding sources with the goal of allocating at least $7 million a year for the Volusia County Housing Trust Fund?
Yes.
Will you agree to meet with Faith Housing Committee over Zoom in the next 30 days to discuss next steps?
Yes.
Council member, you may now address the assembly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. And thanks for your commitment to make a difference for people who need this type of assistance. This is my at least third time here, and I know how critical the needs are for workforce housing, for affordable housing across Volusia County. I've said before, I'm a local realtor. I know how hard it is to help find rentals for our community. So it really matters. It also matters that we get those Sadowski state funds fully funded, because again, it is about the dollars and how we can invest those dollars into the local needs. So we have instructed, I personally have met with our staff and asked them to focus on identifying how to support and fund workforce housing, affordable housing, and identify where the needs are throughout our county. So I thank you for having me, and thank you all for your commitment, and God bless you.
All right, all right. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Watch your step.
Now, Council Member Heather Post was supposed to be here, but we did receive an email where she has answered yes to all 2 questions. At this time, we'll call up Council Member Billy Wheeler. Council Member, do you believe the lack of affordable or workforce housing is a problem that local governments in Volusia County should address?
Yes.
That's a yes. Will you personally advocate for and vote to create a housing trust fund in Volusia County before the end of 2021?
Yes.
To implement linkage fees, a community is first legally required to commission an excess study in consideration of linkage fees as a source of funding for a housing trust fund. Will you personally advocate and vote for the county to commission an excess study on linkage fees?
Yes.
Councilwoman, will you advocate and vote for directing county staff to identify various funds and funding sources with the goal of allocating at least $7 million a year for the Volusia County Trust Fund?
Yes.
Now, will you agree to meet with Faith Housing Committee over Zoom in the next 30 days to discuss the next steps.
Yes.
Councilmember Wheeler, you may now address the assembly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everybody being here. I've been here quite a few times with the First Step Shelter, and now this terrific need that we have right now. I can tell you, last year we were to have a workshop on this very issue, and because of COVID, so much of our year had to be adjusted. But our first workshop this year, there were many of the council members, as Ms. Gertman stated, that we said that workforce housing was one of our #1 priorities, and asked staff to address this immediately. I will tell you that I have been appointed to the Volusia County Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and we are looking at different ways and different options for a trust that when we come up with ideas, it will be presented to the council for a vote. So we're working on it in many avenues. Well, toot, that's a good one. I do want to say Volusia County is addressing, and they know the situation. I did want to say one really positive thing. During this crisis pandemic that we have had, we have done the rental and mortgage front. At the beginning, we have distributed $24.4 million to more than 8,600 households. So we know.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much tonight, all of us, those here in person, those hundreds more at the watch party in Deltona, hundreds more participating with us online. All of us spoke clearly and with one voice. We need a housing trust fund in Volusia County.
Yes.
Tonight, we won some powerful commitments from our elected leaders to further that goal. County Council members Gertman, Post, Wheeler agreed to work towards creating a housing trust fund by the end of 2021. Mayors Henry and Apgar agreed to work to get their own city on board to participate. We celebrate their leadership. We also celebrate the commitments of council members Gertman, Post, and Wheeler to support the county studying the use of linkage fees to fund a housing trust. We know that it will take leadership to identify funding sources to fuel that housing trust. Faith believes linkage fees are the fair way to ensure new development is a benefit to all in our community. We are greatly encouraged to hear that council members Gertman, Post, and Wheeler support setting the goal of funding a countywide housing trust fund with at least a $7 million a year commitment. We know we have a deficit of 16,000 affordable units. We would need at least $7 million a year in housing trusts in order to fill that gap within a few decades. These are major commitments, and we celebrate. We know also that we have major success in a linkage fee program. We would need to buy in and the support from our cities. We were thrilled to see the leadership here tonight, especially from Mayors Henry and Apgar, and their commitment to support their cities doing their part to help alleviate this lack of affordable housing. Finally, we want to celebrate the leaders who chose to attend with us tonight. This is a serious problem. We've all agreed on that. And without our local leaders' attention and dedication to addressing it, this problem will go unsolved. And that's why it's discouraging that not all our county council chose to attend. This is the largest community gathering of its kind. People from all over the county came together to discuss some of the most important issues in our communities. We know that our work isn't over. For those of our elected officials who have committed to stand for a housing trust fund, we have to stand with them, and we do. We have to give them our prayers and our support, and we do, don't we? Tonight, we look forward to attending future council upcoming workshops in the housing next month. Faith does not go away. Our housing committee will seek to work with our elected leaders to ensure that all in our county can afford a roof over their heads. Why? Because faith moves mountains.
Oh, I'm Reverend Sharon Day from Tomoka United Methodist Church. Yes, I'm supposed to introduce myself. In 2018, we identified education as a general problem area. We heard stories in our house meetings of minority and special needs children being arrested and suspended more than other students. We heard about the pain and trauma that these acts caused. When we began to research the problem, we found that Volusia County had one of the highest school-based arrest and suspension rates in the country. According to the Florida Association of School Psychologists, just one out-of-school suspension makes a child 10 times more likely to drop out of school. And our research revealed the fact that students with disabilities and students of color are twice as likely to be suspended or arrested than their classmates. So it wasn't surprising when we learned that Volusia County also had one of the lowest graduation rates for Black children. Discipline is very closely connected to student achievement. If we want our children to do well in school, we have to find ways to keep them in the classroom and get to the root cause of their misbehavior. Our research led us to a solution called restorative practices. Restorative practice is a strategy that seeks to repair relationships that have been damaged by misbehavior, including those damaged through bullying. It does this by bringing about a sense of remorse and restorative action on the part of the offender and forgiveness by the victim. It restores relationships, and it is a win-win for teachers and students. At our 2019 action, in front of over 1,600 people, Faith won commitments from school board members and the former superintendent to implement restorative practices in every school in our county, to use restorative practices during in-school suspension classrooms, to reduce out-of-school suspensions, and to stop the unjust practice of disproportionately suspending minority and special needs children. Since that historic night, there has been much progress. Tonight, I can report to you that although the district isn't using restorative practices 100% of the time and more training is needed, we have made great progress in changing the culture of our schools. High school out-of-school suspensions have gone down by 76% in the last 2 years. That's awesome. Middle schools are down 56%. And elementary schools are down 67%. Yeah, that deserves a great big honk. Yes, all of that. We know this because at that action in 2019, we also won commitments for data transparency. We won commitments from school board members to have their staff send Faith quarterly reports monitoring the use of both in-school and out-of-school suspensions. Reports that are broken down by gender, race, and special needs status for each school. And since 2019, we have been getting regular reports. Every in-school suspension classroom now has a certified teacher and a restorative practice-based curriculum, just like we ask. Congratulations, Faith. Because you came out and showed your support for restorative practices, our children and teachers are both benefiting from a culture change. People power works. When we come together, faith moves mountains. And you already did it, but let's take a moment now and celebrate this. Honk for justice. Good job. Now we will hear from Dr. Michelle Macklin, who is a teacher at Southwestern Middle School, and she'll tell us about her experiences with restorative practices in the classroom.
Good evening. I am Dr. Michelle Macklin, a math coach at Southwestern Middle School in DeLand, Florida. Restorative practices is one of the initiatives started at our school to help curb some of the negative behaviors we were seeing on campus and as a means of reducing subsequent referrals. The premise, as you just heard, of restorative practices is to help students recognize adverse behaviors and to repair or amend the damages caused by them. Helping students to understand empathy and how their actions impact others during what we call Tiger Talk has been very beneficial for our school because it has caused a decline in the discipline referrals we have on campus. For me, the use of restorative practices like circles gives students the ability to problem solve and talk through their choices. Restorative practice is about relationship. Building connections with students during restorative sessions has been instrumental in the decline of our student referrals. One of our students, for example, last year had 30 to 40 referrals, resulting in school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and other disciplinary actions. He was very disruptive in class, so teachers started incorporating restorative circles in class when needed. Everyone in the circle, including him, had the opportunity to share how a disruptive class made them feel. Following the circle activity, the teacher and I had a conference with the student and asked how it made him feel to hear his peers describe his behavior and disruptions in class. He said, "I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make people feel like they didn't want to be in class." We then developed a signal so that when he got riled up and needed a timeout, the teacher would give him a pass and he would be permitted to take a break with a predetermined adult. Once he calmed down, he returned to class, and this made his behavior much better. The rest of the year in that class, his outbursts decreased. He probably this year has had a third of the referrals from the previous year. I truly believe that the purposeful approach used to engage him and help him see and understand, when you do this, this is how others feel. We gave him the tools needed to pause before he responds in anger. Restorative practices are a needed part of our arsenal, our teacher toolbox, to help us find meaningful ways to handle difficult situations without an immediate write-up or student removal from class. Students don't learn anything from being outside the classroom, nor does it change behavior. I can only speak for my school when I say that my principal is very committed to the use of restorative practices. She genuinely believes that if we can reach students with relationships and teach them on the front end how to handle situations, their behaviors on the back end won't be so bad. Again, restorative practices is about relationships. It has allowed me and other staff to form more rich and deep relationships with students. Now they ask to go see administrators or counselors because they need help. Before, they were being forced to go see someone after they misbehaved. This shows their growth because now they are stopping themselves and recognizing that I'm about to do something that's going to get me in trouble. They stop before the behavior escalates. Unfortunately, restorative practices doesn't seem to be as high a priority for the district. Last year, we started restorative practices. Every morning for the first 15 minutes of class was dedicated to what we call circle time and restorative practices. After Christmas last year, we lost it because the district started moving things around. We were all devastated because we, the teachers, could see the benefit of it. Despite the district pulling our dedicated 15 minutes of circle time, we continued to use it when needed and could fit it in. Since we take training on restorative practices that the district provides, as teachers, we should have time to use it in the classroom. I believe that this is a best practice and we should return to it. I have seen the benefits firsthand. It comes out in not just how students interact with teachers, but how they interact with one another. The pandemic this past year highlighted the mental health push in education. Some of our students are dealing with things like hunger and bad home environments. Restorative practices helps us identify those students who are having a hard time. The best way to support our students' mental health is to provide restorative practices opportunities for them across the board. If we make a practice of this strategy at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, students will get cohesion that sets them up for success in life. Many students currently lack interpersonal skills, appropriate social skills, effective communication skills, and empathy, all of which are a necessity in society. So by consistently investing in restorative practices and social emotional learning, we really can make advancements in the mental health initiative. Lastly, for adults who haven't been exposed to the types of environments students come from, the use of restorative practices and social emotional learning forces them to get out of their comfort zone. It forces them to confront the lives that their students are living. I can't say you should know better than stealing, and stealing is wrong, if I've never been hungry enough to steal food. Unless the why is understood, condemning for the what is meaningless. Restorative justice is not just for students, but it benefits the entire learning community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin, for sharing. This testimony and these statistics the district has provided are indicators that things are moving in the right direction. However, we are not yet implementing restorative practices across the board. We want to see them used in a proactive way as opposed to only in a reactive way after a child has misbehaved. We are here tonight to celebrate progress and to continue to hold the district accountable for equality in our schools. We have one question for each of the school board members present. Faith has met face-to-face with each of these stakeholders individually in the past few months. We have submitted our questions to them ahead of time so they can be prepared with their answers. We ask that each of you provide a clear answer. Once everyone has responded to each question, you will each have 1 minute to explain your answer. Mr. Persis, will you direct your staff to create a written plan to expand full school restorative practices to every school by the 2022-23 school year?
Yes.
Woohoo!
Will you have that plan in place by June 1st, 2021?
The plan to have a plan by 22-23? Is that what it is? I just want to make sure I understand.
No, we want you to have the plan written
For the plan.
so that you can start implementing and have it fully implemented by 2022-23.
Yes, the answer is yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening, and for those who are watching from the comforts of their home. Just want to say that the Superintendent Fritz and I know the whole entire school board, we're very concerned about helping students in any way possible. The restorative practices program has been very good for us. There are some offshoots from restorative practices that are very similar. A program called Checked and Connect, a program called Ruler, a program called Positive Behavior in Schools. All of these programs adhere to the same principles of restorative practices. I will say that we are committed to, training 4 more schools this summer. Thank you. We are committed to the children.
Mr. Cologne, will you direct your staff to create a written plan to expand full school restorative practices to every school by the 2022-23 school year?
Yes.
Will you have that plan in place by June 1st, 2021?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You have 1 minute.
So it's not by chance that the numbers got that improved. It's an intentional effort by everyone in our district to make it happen. You see 10% increases, 15%, but not that amount. So we are actively working on it. But I'm going to say what I said the last time, and I've learned I'm going on year number 3. What you all are holding us accountable to, you've got to take back to your congregations. Because when your child is harmed by somebody, what I get in emails is, why did the kid only get suspended for 3 days? Why did that child not get arrested? That child hurt my child. So the same way you all are expecting from us to have this mercy, go back to your congregations, talk about restorative practices, because you know what? A lot of this starts at home. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Burnett, good evening.
Good evening.
Will you direct your staff to create a written plan to expand full school restorative practices to every school by the 2022-23 school year?
Yes.
Will you have that plan in place by June 1st, 2021?
Yes.
Now you can have your comments.
I just want to say that we are committed in Volusia County to restorative practices and making sure that all children are treated equal and have the opportunity to receive a high quality education.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for your commitments and for helping us put an end to the school to prison pipeline in our community.
We all know that children make mistakes. In our community, many of them are arrested for those mistakes. Children as young as 6 years old have been arrested for minor misdemeanors and labeled for life as criminals. Faith cares about this problem because it surfaced in our house meeting starting in 2014. We heard that children were getting arrested for minor things and then finding out years later that they had a criminal record. Our biblical values teach us about love, redemption, mercy, and giving people a second chance. So please honk your horn if as a minor you drank alcohol before it was legal. How about writing on a desk at school? Honk your horn. Many of us would not be where we are today had we been arrested for this misbehavior.
I work for justice in this community because my faith calls me to.
but also because my children have been and still are in the school system here. For the past 8 years, our youth criminal justice community has gone on over 200 research and negotiating meetings with local, state, and national experts on criminal justice. We see ourselves as watchdogs for the least of these. This is what our faith calls us to do. Children are the least of these. At the Faith Action Assembly in 2017, in front of 1,400 people, Sheriff Chipman committed to 80% use of civil citations to divert first-time misdemeanor youth arrests. The new Daytona Beach Police Chief, Chief Young, told us in a meeting recently that he didn't understand why the numbers on the state's website were so low for his agency. He said that his officers didn't want to arrest children eligible for civil citations. Local law enforcement heads tell us they don't want to arrest children for making childish mistakes. Yet, the numbers on the DJJ website does not reflect this position. For your understanding, from this point, we will refer to all these as DJJ.
Let me also say that we know we have run a little foul of the time, but we feel this is important information, and so we please ask you to remain to the end of our program. You see, it was a challenge for us to explain this problem to you without being able to quantify it without using statistics. Our sheriff and our local chief juvenile probation officer, Dan Merrithew of DJJ, say that the only data available to the public on the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice's website cannot be relied on to, and I quote, measure the commitment of any agency to the civil citation process. Tragically, that is the only data available to us. The only place we could find data on juvenile justice arrests is on the state of Florida's Department of Juvenile Justice website. So we're going to focus on what we know to be true.
Over the last few weeks, this problem has turned into a war of words in social media and in the papers. We must not let that distract us from the real purpose. We want to keep the focus on the actual children who we are fighting to protect. One child arrested for a nonviolent first-time misdemeanor, we believe, is one child too many. To show an example of how an arrest can negatively affect a child, we will hear a brave testimony from Barbara Cochran. We share this testimony not to blame anyone, but to humanize this problem. Ms. Cochran?
Hello, my name is Barbara. I'm with the Volusia Flagler AFL-CIO. My son's name is Ronald. When Ronald was 7 years old, Ronald was arrested for 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors. The incident happened a block away from my home at Burns Science Tech, a charter school in Volusia County, a place where the kids in the neighborhood often played and have never had any problems before. One day, while my son was playing with his 10-year-old cousin and another 8-year-old girl from the neighborhood, they noticed the door was unlocked. It turns out the door was broken. It didn't lock, and it had been broken for who knows how long. They entered the building, they rode their bikes down the hallways, they ripped some posters off the wall, colored on a teddy bear, knocked over a desk, and made a mess. Ronald was charged with felony burglary, trespassing, and criminal mischief. What they did was wrong, but I don't believe it was criminal, and I don't think they believed it to be criminal. They make a mess like that in their bedrooms. I was at work earlier that day, and I had no idea what had happened until the police showed up at my door and told me they were arresting my son, and I was terrified. I told them, okay, I'll drive him to the police station. The cop said no, that I could not drive him. I said, okay, can I ride with him? They said no. They put him in the back of the police car in tears. When I arrived at the police station in New Smyrna, they would not let me in. They would not let me talk to him. They would not let me see him. He was in there for 3 hours. When they finally let him out, I noticed that he had wet his pants in the police department. He was just that scared. He was crying for his mom. It was the worst feeling in the world. As a parent, you never want to see your child go through that. Knowing that he hadn't eaten and that he was probably hungry. When I brought him home, he was still so scared, he slept in bed with me. And after he was asleep, I cried most of the night. When we got a court date, as we were walking in, he stopped. He said, "Mommy, I don't want to go." I told him we had to go in. He was so afraid, he threw up in the parking lot. When we walked into the building, there was no other kids his age, none as small as him. He was so little, he couldn't even see over the podium, so he had to stand beside it. When I told the judge what had happened, she didn't believe it was something that he should have been arrested for, and that he shouldn't have had to go through that. Ronald, ever since, has been very leery of police officers. When we were in a store, he would grab my hand and look at the floor. I believe the fine was around $300, and I would have happily paid that fine. I would have paid to fix the door, even if it had costed more. I would like to add that my niece, the 10-year-old little girl that I spoke about in the first half, she was also arrested. And when they showed up, she was in her swimsuit. They wouldn't even let her go inside to get dressed. She had to get dressed in the back of the police car. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I want to assure everyone tonight that we couldn't believe the story. We actually saw the police record for this arrest just to verify its authenticity. At the time of the arrest, Ronald was only 3'8" and weighed only 75 pounds. I'd like to reiterate, we are not blaming any one particular person for what happened to this child. This is a systemic problem here in Volusia County. Ronald is not the only one. And although that story didn't happen yesterday, it is important to hear how one arrest, can negatively affect a child. But there is a better way. Ronald did receive diversion after his arrest and had to spend time cleaning up the school he damaged. The problem is, he could have faced the same consequences with a civil citation. Instead, he was arrested and now has a burglary of structure, trespassing on school grounds, and criminal mischief charges on his record. A record he will likely have to explain for the rest of his life. Florida DJJ operates a civil citation program in our community. They state that, quote, "The goal of the civil citation program is to divert youth prior to arrest, hold youth accountable for delinquent behavior, involve parents in the sanction of youth, and prevent the youth's further involvement in the juvenile justice system." Civil citations are less expensive for taxpayers. That's all of us. An arrest costs $4,500 and a civil citation, only $400. Also, a child who receives a civil citation is less likely to commit another crime as opposed to a child who has been arrested.
For the past 8 years, we have been fighting for equal access to civil citations in our county. Our elected Sheriff Mike Chidwood has attended 6 of our action assemblies since 2014, where he publicly shared his goal of achieving 80% usage of civil citations for first-time offenders. And as President Ronald Reagan once said, we have to trust but verify. Since the sheriff and DJJ say we can't rely on the state's DJJ data, we would simply like to see those intentions formalized in a report that we can share. Come on, you can honk for that. At the Action Assembly in 2018, Faith asked Sheriff Chitwood for quarterly reports showing each civil citation the Volusia County Sheriff's Department issued for a first-time misdemeanor offense, the gender and the race of the child, and the offense committed. Sheriff Chitwood answered yes and received a thunderous applause from Faith members. We have received only 2 out of a possible 12 reports in the last 3 years. This gives us no way to know if the data is valid without being in conversation with local law enforcement agencies. We are calling for data transparency for our community. The public deserves access to this data. Come on. If law enforcement aren't tracking progress in a transparent way, how will we know if law enforcement is using civil citations for first-time nonviolent offenders? We can't if we only have access to data that they say we cannot trust. So here we are now. What can we do? We chose to keep pushing because our children matter. Listen to Dr. King explain what happens when you keep pushing. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, he said, you may well ask, why direct action? Isn't negotiation a better path? You are quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. But I must confess that I'm not afraid of the word tension. I've earnestly opposed violent tension. But there is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. Since the tension in our community has elevated this issue to the public eye, myself and other community leaders met with Sheriff Chitwood last week. People are paying attention. Sheriff Chitwood reported that he is working with DJJ to make the state of Florida's DJJ website more accurate.
Yes.
Even going as far to fix the errors going back to 2016 and provide us those reports. This is a win for the children of our community. Honk your horn.
Get out here. Come on. Come on. Get out here. Come on. Come on. Get out here. Come on. Come on.
Our elected leaders have to be on the same page about the data's accuracy too. They need to work together to show us what is really going on with civil citations and youth arrest in Volusia County. Yeah. After this evening, to address this major lack of data transparency was our sheriff, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and the law enforcement community. So tonight, we need your help. They must hear our unified message. You were given, as you came in tonight, a yellow piece of paper with 6 postcards that we want everyone to sin. The Florida Department of Juvenile Justice is a state agency, so they will be mailed to Governor DeSantis, Volusia County State Representative Elizabeth Fetterhoff, and Sherry Jackson, Research and Data Integrity Director for DJJ. And then we will also send them to our local leaders, Sheriff Mike Chitwood, State Attorney R.J. Larissa, Dan Merrithew, 7th Circuit Chief Probation Officer for the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
To those who are joining us online, you too can participate in sending these postcards virtually. To do so, please go to the Faith website at faithvolusia.org. On the homepage, there is a button that says Youth Justice Email. Click on that button and then type in your name, your email, and address to the email we've written. Then scroll down to the bottom and click Submit. Please read the message. But to summarize, it states that our community deserves to be able to monitor the use of civil citations and youth arrests. But we cannot do that without reliable data. We're calling on all of them. All of them. Come on, all of them. We're calling on all of them to work together to provide us accurate data by May the 1st of 2021. You will need to sign your name and put your address down 6 times on the yellow paper. But we can do it, can't we?
Yes.
March on for justice.
Faith has been addressing these issues for years. Due to our diligent action and dedication to data transparency, we're delighted that these issues are finally being looked at. We look forward to more collaborative efforts that will ensure reaching law enforcement's stated goal of 80% usage of civil citation. But there is more work to be done, and we have to stay united. All of us pushing is getting us somewhere. They're looking at the data, and there is a public conversation. Congratulations, Faith.
Hard go hard for justice! Come on! Hard go hard!
This has been a truly momentous evening. In the last hour and 45 minutes, we have won a series of important commitments from local leaders and taken giant leaps forward in our united efforts to create housing opportunities for working families and to ensure youth can learn from their misbehavior without being defined by it. This is an incredibly difficult time for the whole world. We know that in our community, it's those on the margins who have suffered the most. In the midst of a global pandemic, our congregations found a way to make our voices heard for justice. To those of us here at the Drive-In Church, to our brothers and sisters watching at Our Lady of the Lakes in Deltona, and to all those who joined us online, know that distance cannot truly separate us. In all, 700 people have turned out to stand for more affordable housing and for an end of the school to prison pipeline. And that number is in spite of the technological difficulties that many of you at home found in trying to log on through YouTube. We are united in our pursuit of a better Volusia County, and we are calling on our elected officials to unite together and to use their power to make change for the common good. But our work isn't over. public officials here tonight, from county council members, mayors, school board members, have made commitments to tackle these pressing issues. They have stepped up to the plate. Now it's our turn to support them as they work to fulfill their commitments. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Faith has been around for 20 years, and we are here for the long haul. We will continue to build our coalition, and we will continue to work with local leaders to create a more just Volusia County. Please remember to turn in your registration page and your signed postcards as you exit this evening. Save the date for the Justice Ministry Celebration on Tuesday, June 7th at 6:30 p.m., where we will invest in our ministry and celebrate all we have overcome in this past year. We want to give a huge thank you to our incredibly gracious hosts for this evening, the Daytona Beach Church, Drive-In Church. The work of justice is not easy. Sometimes when we push for justice, it upsets folks. People in power sometimes take our demand for change personally. But as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given up by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. Our community deserves action and transparency. We cannot wait any longer. For the elected officials that did not attend tonight, we will continue to push for change. For those community leaders that attended this evening, heartfelt thank you. We will show up and support these issues when you bring them forward. As we say, faith moves mountains.
Good evening. My name is the Reverend Floyd Lindsay Narcisse. I am the pastor of historic New Bethel AME Church in Ormond Beach, Florida. Let us pray. We are called to listen, to command, to love, and to do justice. Our gathering this day reminds us of the responsibility of work with one another to remake our world into a more hopeful, peaceful place. We are inspired to guide, to hear the cry of the poor and the oppressed, and to respond. We know that alone we are limited in what we can do, but together we are powerful. Our strength comes from our unity. Grant us continued strength and substance. We ask all these things from you, whose spirit makes us one. May God bless you and God keep you. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Narcisse. As co-chair of Faith, I, Reverend Kathy Tu Ricky, call the 2021 Nehemiah Action Assembly adjourned. Go safely, in peace, and in the faith and knowledge that faith moves mountains.